Today's daf we're going to be learning is Nedarim daf Hey. Today's daf is sponsored by Ed and Prives in honor of my wife Adele Druk and her mother Susan Cheshvan. Today's daf is also sponsored by Naomi Cohen for the refuah shlema of Chava bat Ilana Shoshana. Okay, there's a study guide for today. I recommend you use it. Again, even if your Hebrew's not good, it depends on your level of Hebrew, but still the structure of the sheet should help you with understanding the structure of today's daf, even without understanding all the words. Okay, it's not a simple daf, I'll warn you, so just be warned. We're going to do a lot of little nitpicky kind of details of word, choice of words used, how they're used, etc. But again, we'll try to talk about the broader idea. Okay, so let's talk about for a minute what a yad is. Okay, we mentioned that according to the Bavli, these cases in the second part of the Mishnah, where it says, Mudrani mimcha, mufrashi mimcha, meruchakni mimcha, literally means I will be avowed from you, I will be separated from you, I will be distanced from you, shani ochel lecha, shani toem lecha, that I will eat from you, meaning kind of I will not eat food of yours, or that I will taste from you, but I will not eat food from yours. This is a cut-off version of a neder. Why is it cut off? Well, it doesn't say, right, that something will be forbidden to me. It doesn't really have an object there. It's missing some of the basic words of neder. It doesn't have the language neder. It doesn't have a kinoi. Right? Notice those words are missing. Normally we have you're forbidden, right? The word neder, the word something like a neder, a kinoi. This doesn't have that. It's missing some of the words. That's why it's considered cut off. Today we're going to learn that there's two types of cut off languages. There could be a cut off language. Again, I'm kind of prefacing with things we're not going to yet see in the Gemara until later. But you can have a yad that's not clear what you mean, and you can have a yad that's very clear what you mean. You can cut off your statement and not say a complete statement, but it's very obvious what you mean. You can also have a cut off statement that it's not so clear really what you mean. And then there's going to be within yad, where everyone agrees yadot, nedarim are like nedarim, but maybe that only means the yad, maybe that only means the yad that is clear what it means rather than a yad that's not clear. Okay, so we'll get back to this issue, but I wanted you to get the concept above everything here. So what we had was yesterday, in the previous daf, Shmuel came along and said, Bikulan ad shiomar shani ochel lecha shani toem lecha. So even though the Mishnah seemed like it was giving 5 cases, Mudrani, Frashni, Muruchakni, Shani Ochel Lecha, Shani Toem Lecha, it sounded like 5 cases, and each one on its own would be a vow, came Shmuel and he limited. And the way we understood him limiting it was, well, if you say the word Mudrani, Mimcha, that phrase, it's not enough unless you also add to it one of the 2, right? There's 3 and then there's 2. One of the 2. You need a combo. Okay, you have to take one of these, and that goes together. If it's just by itself, it doesn't work. So now, the Gemara had some issues with that. They said, what do you mean? These other Braitot said these versions that seem to say 1, 2, and 3 are forbidden, 4 and 5 are forbidden, some had the opposite order, and it seemed to really be clear that each one on its own is forbidden, so Shmuel can't really be explaining the Mishnah in that way. To which the Gemara said, okay, let's try a different option, starting from 3 lines at the bottom of Daf Daled Amud Bet. Ela Amar Shmuel, Tama da Amar Shani Ochal Lecha, Shani Toem Lecha, Hu da Asur v'Chavero Mutar. We're now going to say, I'm mid-sentence, so we haven't said anything yet, but we're going to start with saying, yes, it's true that Shmuel says you have to have one from the top line and one from the second line, put them together, but not that you have to, we're going to change it a little. It's just, it's going to be different if you only say Mudrani Mimcha, Mufrashi Mimcha, Muruchakni Mimcha. Then if you say, I'm just going to take Mudrani Mimcha as the example, but it means it would be true for any of the 3. But that's different. Okay, there's one category which is Mudrani Mimcha by itself, and then there's a different category, Mudrani Mimcha Shani Ochel Lecha. Now what's the difference? So again, starting with what we just read. If you say Mudrani Mimcha Shani Ochel Lecha, then it's very clear what the direction is here. Mudrani Mimcha, I will be avowed from you that I will not eat from you, meaning I am forbidden to you, but you are not forbidden to me. You can eat my food, and that's clear. Now, no one even thought otherwise, but all of a sudden, according to this explanation of Shmuel, we're going to suggest otherwise. Aval amar mudrani hemach. Now they change hemach and mimcha, but it really seems to be one and the same, hemach or mimcha. If you say mudrani hemach lechude, you just say mudrani hemach or mudrani mimcha, shne or mufrashni mimcha or ruchagni mimcha without the added shani ochel lecha, shnehem asurim. What you mean to say is we're going in both directions. When I say mudrani mimcha, even though the simple reading would be I am separating myself from you, right? I will be forbidden to all your stuff. Actually, you're really saying both directions. And only if you add the words that I will not eat from you, or what I will eat from you, which basically means that I will not eat from you, then, right there, it's very clear, me from you. If you say mudrani mimcha, it could mean both directions. Now, there's a bit of a problem with this that the Gemara is not going to raise. The Gemara is going to raise it. We're going to have 3 explanations today. Okay, we started with one yesterday. Altogether, there's going to be 4 explanations of Shmuel. We're going to have 3 today. In the end, we're going to question the next one with this question, which I'm already going to raise here because it's important to understand. Shmuel seemed to be limiting, right? He seemed to be saying, it only works if you add the words imochalcha. In this explanation, though, Shmuel is actually saying, if you add the words shani ochalcha to mudrani mimcha, it'll actually go in only one direction. But if you say it by itself, it'll be more, right? More encompassing. And that's not really the language that Shmuel used, because he said, bikulan ad sheyomal, until you say, almost like it won't be a problem unless you say shani ochalcha. So to reinterpret Shmuel like this is a bit problematic. The Gemara is going to raise different questions instead. It could have theoretically raised that as a question as well. The language of Shmuel doesn't really match this explanation, because Shmuel seemed to be saying, again, this is, and you have to understand, this is the concept. Shmuel saying, we thought Shmuel originally, and the language of Shmuel seems to be saying, he's limiting. Mudrani is not really going to work unless you add shani ochalacha. In this case, he's actually saying mudrani is much stronger because it's going to go in both directions. Now, how does he get this? So the Ran tries to explain. The Ran says, if you look at the top Ran on the page, okay, why would it go in both directions? If I say, again, this is going to be very nitpicky, okay, and one can maybe argue, but these are, you have to remember, this is all called havamina, hypothetical, theoretical. They're trying to get to what maybe Shmuel was saying. In the end, they're going to reject it. Okay, you can see he himself is struggling. It seems to me, okay, because it's not really clear. Dahainu Tama, the reason why he thinks mudrani hemach would be both directions, demashma mudar ani unechasai mimech uminechasayach. Mudar ani, mudrani means me and my property. What they seem to be saying is, I won't benefit from you, and my property won't benefit from you. Now, the Ran continues to say, I'm not going to read this all inside, but he basically says, is there such a thing that you could say my property can't benefit from you? My property is not a person that if there's benefit. A property doesn't benefit from anything. So one could say maybe in some way you could say, but what he's basically saying is if I say my property can't benefit from you, there's no such thing. What it really means is you can't benefit from my property, because there is no such thing as property having benefit. People gain benefit. Property doesn't gain benefit, and therefore what he assumes is the word mudrani, which means I will be avowed, means me and my property will be avowed. From you means from you and your property. And then it's going to have to go in both directions, because there's no such thing as my property benefiting from you or your property benefiting from me, and therefore it must be two-directional. So, second interpretation of Shmuel, again, even though I raised a difficulty, which the Gemara is not going to raise, the Gemara is going to raise a different difficulty, but it will be the difficulty they're going to raise next, is this seems to be implying that Mudrani Mimcha by itself is actually more far-reaching, because it goes in both directions. It not only is effective to forbid me to benefit from you, it's also forbidding you to benefit from me. Whereas if I add the words, I say Mudrani Mimcha Shani Ochelecha, what I will eat from you, then it's clear it's only me. I can't benefit, but you can, because I said, I will eat from you. So now they're going to say, and in fact, we have someone else who says this as well, and that will be a support for Shmuel. Ki had amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, as Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, Mudrani hemach shnehem asurim. He says that explicitly, and we're going to assume that Shmuel is saying like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, that someone who says Mudrani hemach, just those two words, it goes in both directions. Now the Gemara starts raising questions from a Mishnah later on in our Masechet on Daf Mem Zayin. Tanan, it says in the Mishnah, Hareini alecha cherem. I will be for you cherem. Hamudar asur aval madir lo. So that means I will be for you cherem. That means you will be forbidden to me. You can't benefit from me, but I can benefit from you. Okay, madir. Because I said, you will be a cherem, right? Hareini, sorry. I will be to you a cherem. That means you can't benefit from me. But it doesn't go in both directions. Now, if we say hareini, me includes just like mudrani, which is, mudrani, by the way, is in Aramaic. This happens a lot where letters drop. We put two words together and we drop like an aleph, for example. So mudar ani is said like in a shorter form as mudrani. So mudrani means mudar ani. I am avowed. So that's just the same as saying hareini, I am, which means me and my property. And again, my property can't be forbidden, right? And alecha on you and your property. Your property can't be forbidden to, right? This alecha is no different than mimcha. So really the alecha is, I meant to say, it's the alecha. Alecha on you and your property will be cherem, right? It's hareini alecha. I will be for you and for your property cherem, that you can't benefit from me and your property can't benefit from me. There's no such thing as your property not benefiting from me, and therefore it must mean I can't benefit from your property. So therefore, if we're going to say that, then this should be both directions. Based on mudrani mimcha, also hareini alecha cherem should be in both directions. To which the Gemara answers, when the Mishnah said hareini alecha cherem, and it said it's only in one direction, it meant to parish va'at alai lo. It's in a case where you said, I will be for you cherem, but you will not be for me. And if, even though it didn't say that in the Mishnah, but right now we're going to suggest maybe that's what it meant. That you actually said, but not you for me. To which the Gemara says, but look at the next line. At alai cherem, same problem. You will be upon me cherem, which is the reverse direction. What does the Mishnah say? Hanodir asur aval mudar lo. It's only one directional. Again, it should be both directions. So, because alai should include me and my property, which then would mean both directions. So they say again, same answer. Kigon de parish va'ana alach lo. It's when you said it, I will not be a problem for you. So just I'm forbidden, but not you. So now, based on this whole explanation, the way we understood this Mishnah, we'd have to say that in order to make it only one directional, you have to be very specific and say it's all one directional. So then the Gemara says, okay, aval stam amai. So then, what are you going to say? If I just said it's stam, meaning I just said hareini alecha cherem, and I didn't say, but not you on me, but not me on you. Or if I said the other language, but not you on me, then shnei hamasulim, then you're going to say it goes in both directions, which matches what Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina said and what we think Shmuel said. But that doesn't work with the Mishnah. They're basically quoting one by one lines from that Mishnah. So we finally get to the last line of that Mishnah, Hamidikatani Seifa, which is going to reject this entire reading. Hareini alecha va'at alai shnei hamasulim. It says, if I say I will be for you and you will be for me, then we'll both be forbidden. Well, that seems to imply what? Only if I say it's going to go in both directions is this going to work. That clearly goes against what Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina said, and the explanation we tried to bring for Shmuel. So again, Seifa says hareini alai va'at alai shnei hamasulim. Hadenu dishnei hamasulim. Only in that kind of case would be both. It would go in both directions because I was very clear about which direction it was going in. But right, it's going in both hastama. But if I didn't specify, again, this would compare to our case mudrani hemach or mudrani mimcha. I didn't specify. It sounded more like me. I will be forbidden to you. I'm sorry. I will be forbidden to benefit from you. So hastama hu asur b'chaviro mutal. Sounds like if it's just stam, only you be forbidden, but the other, right, I be forbidden, but the other side would be permitted. So you can't explain that mudrani hemach or mudrani mimcha, however you say it, or mufrashi mimcha, or any of those three languages mean both directions. So we reject the second option, and then in order to fix it, you would expect them to say Shmuel, but now they're going to fix. Okay, we had Shmuel. Within that, we tried to prove Shmuel by bringing Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. We said Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina's reading is totally wrong because it contradicts this explicit Mishnah, to which they try to reread Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. So we're still within this explanation of Shmuel. Elahachi itmar de Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Mudav ani lecha shnehem asurim. Okay, now he changes the language. Again, we're going to be very, I told you, very specific about each word used, and it's not going to be 100% clear why that word means that, but try to give explanations going with the Ran. Mudar ani lecha. If I use the word lecha, now that's not what it said in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said mudrani mimcha. If I use the word lecha, to you, then shnehem asurim. Lecha specifically, okay, so again, the Ran, again, whether you buy this or not, I'm not arguing, I'm not going to get into that, okay? Just at least understand what he's saying, and in the end, anyway, this will be rejected. But the Ran there on the Ran, Elahachi itmar amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanin mudrani lecha shnehem asurim, says, de lecha mashma lecha, okay, that wasn't very helpful, lecha means lecha, to you, klomar nechasai asurin lecha, sounds like my possessions are forbidden to you, umashma mishalchan, it sounds like from you. Okay? He tried to distinguish between the language. Okay, I'm not going to try to convince you that this is, it's hard to understand. But what he wants to try to suggest is, if you had the word lecha, it would be two directional. If you have the word mimcha, it's only one directional. But then, now let's take it back to Shmuel in our Mishnah, where would that take you? That if you had lecha, and you said mudrani lecha by itself, it would go in both directions. What Shmuel was saying, and hemach would only be one directional. Why do we have to say hemach is one directional? You'd have to say it because that matches the Mishnah of the cherem, where it's very clear it's one directional unless you specify otherwise. So hareini alecha cherem, right? That's like mudrani mimcha. Okay? Now, what Shmuel is saying is, but if you had mudar, and this is what you would have to take based on this explanation of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Shmuel would then say, if you said mudrani lecha, it would be both are forbidden. But if you say mudrani lecha shani ochal lecha, and you added that, then it would be one-sided. So now the Gemara is going to have a problem with that, though. Okay, so now they say, v'hami dekatane hemach v'ukimna l'matnitin de Shmuel v'kulan ad shemar shani to'em lecha shani ochel lecha hu da'asur v'chavero mutar ava b'mudrani hemach shnehem asurim. They say, wait, but that doesn't match the language in the Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't say lecha. The Mishnah says mincha. So if you wanted to say that the Mishnah is teaching us, let's distinguish between lecha when you added shani ochel, or you didn't add shani ochel, but mudrani hemach is always going to be one-sided, well then, Shmuel's comment on the Mishnah is irrelevant, because the Mishnah is not saying lecha. The Mishnah says mincha, or hemach, whatever language you have in our Mishnah. But the point is, it's very hard to read the Mishnah in that way, and therefore they reject this reading. So again, first reading, I'll just bring up the sheet for a minute, just so you can see the structure. Okay, so the first reading we have, which was in yesterday's daf, Bikulan ad she'omar shani ochal lecha shani to'em lecha. Mudrani mimcha by itself is meaningless. To which we said it can't be, because the Braito say very clearly, if you say mudarani mimcha, mufrashni mimcha, meruchakni mimcha, it's forbidden, and therefore, based on a few things we said there, it can't possibly work. Then we tried shani ochal lecha, shani to'em lecha is as we're going to distinguish. If you say mudrani hemach by itself, it's going to go in both directions. If you add shani ochal lecha, shani to'em lecha, then only you're going to be forbidden and your friend will be permitted. And then we said, because of the mission of harei alai cherem, morat alai cherem, areni alecha cherem, morat alai cherem, which is basically the same as mudrani hemach, and there, unless you say it in both ways, it's only going to be one directional. You can't read our Mishnah in that way. And even if you want to suggest that it's lecha would be shnehem asurim, you can't read that into our Mishnah because our Mishnah didn't use the word lecha. Okay, so that's our two first explanations. Now we're going to bring two more explanations, and only the last one is going to stand. Ella. And the question I raised on the second one is going to be the question the Gemara raises on this one, which is the language of Shmuel doesn't really match this. Ella mi'ikara de Shmuel hachi itmar. What Shmuel really meant to say was this. Ta'ama da'amal shani ochal lecha v'shani to'em lecha hu de'ein hu asur ella ba'achila. Wait a minute. You might have thought about this when you saw it. Mudrani mimcha is a very general term. I will be avowed from you. Very general. Shani ochal lecha means with food. So if you add the word shani ochal lecha, then you're basically forbidding food. I can't eat your food. But hamudrani mimcha asur afilu b'hana'ah. if I say the word mudrani mimcha, which is a much more general term, without adding the word shani ochalcha, everything of yours will be forbidden to me. I can't benefit from anything. I can't borrow your car. I can't, right? Any of your stuff, not just food. Any kind of benefit will be forbidden. So now, what's the problem? The problem is that what we're doing here is we're doing exactly what Shmuel did, which is distinguish between saying mudrani mimcha by itself and saying it attached to the words mudrani mimcha shani ochelcha. So again, the first reading was mudrani mimcha by itself is meaningless, and only if you add the words does it mean something. The second was mudrani mimcha is going to be worse. It's going to go in both directions. If you add the word shani ochelcha, it's only one direction. We rejected that based on the Mishnah further on Nedarim. Now we're going to say the same direction, though, that mudrani mimcha is going to be more encompassing. It's going to say you can't eat, right? Mudrani mimcha means I will not benefit from you, not any kind of benefit. But if I say mudrani mimcha with these added words, shani ochalcha, then it's only food. Okay? Now again, the problem is the language of Shmuel was bikulan ad shiomar shani ochalcha, which sounds like only if you say shani ochalcha will it be effective, or it'll be worse, it sounds like. And this is actually saying it'll be better, it'll be limited more. So therefore, the Gemara is going to ask this question, but in a bit of a different language. What it's going to say is, if that's the case, ihachi lema Shmuel hachi, Shmuel should have worded it differently. He should have said, v'im lo amar ella shani ochalcha v'shani to'em lecha. If he added the words lo amar ella, means if he only said the words shani ochalcha v'shani to'em lecha, meaning he added them on to mudrani mimcha, ein asur ella ba'achila. Or according to the Bach, he has a different, which is asur afilu b'hana'ah, right? If you didn't add those words, then it would even be more severe. It would be even permitted to benefit from. So since that's not the language Shmuel used, it can't possibly be. And again, this question could have been asked in the previous one as well, because both 2 and 3 made mudrani mimcha more all-encompassing. Okay, worse. And Shmuel's language is actually that by itself, it's actually less. Okay? And therefore, if Shmuel wanted to say it's more, he should have worded it as, well, if you add the words, then it's limited. Okay? And then that would have made more sense. So it's hard to read Shmuel this way with the language Shmuel used. Therefore, the Gemara is going to reject this as well. Elahachi itmar. So now we get to the fourth and final explanation of Shmuel. Tama da'amar shani ochel lecha v'shani to'em lecha hu da'asu. Okay, again, this is back to square one, the option one. It's really only because you use the words shani ochel lecha, shani to'em lecha. If you just said mudrani mimcha by itself, it wouldn't work. Now, why is this? Aval amar mudrani hemach lo mashma da'amar asur. Okay, basically, first they're just saying it. We don't yet know why. If you just said the words mudrani mimcha by themselves, without the added word shani ochel lecha, this brings us back to option one, then it's not a problem. Why? My taima, mudar ani mimcha could be explained as, if I say, I will be avowed to you, or from you, really is the explanation, lo mishti'ina b'hadach mashma. Now, most of the commentaries explain this as, it possibly means, in other words, I could have used those words to say, I don't want to talk to you. Mufrashti mimcha, separating myself from you, could mean, I don't want to do business with you. I'm going to stay away from you. Okay, now, what you follow here, there could be different ways of understanding this. Either they really think that mudrani has to do with dibur, speech, mufrashni has to do with business, maybe, or they're just suggesting any one of these terms theoretically could mean only this. It's not clear whether these are specifically corresponding to those words, or just saying in general, any of these words could mean I want to distance myself from you with something in particular. Maybe I don't want to speak with you. Maybe I don't want to do business with you. I want to keep my distance from you. Maybe it just means I'm not going to get into your private space. I'm not getting into your 4 amot. I won't go that close to you. Okay, remember your 4 amot is your personal space. I won't go into, I'm not going to benefit from anything that's within your personal space. So, what's the issue here? Well, what this means is, and we're going to call this by its term in one more minute, This is what we call yadayim she'ena mochichot, an ambiguous phrase. This is what I mentioned in the beginning of class. This, according to Shmuel, is a yad that's not clear what you mean. As soon as you add the word shani uchalecha, it's very clear that you're talking about eating food. I won't eat any food from your house or from anything that belongs to you. But without the word food, we have no idea what you mean. You could mean food, you could mean all benefit, you could mean business, you could mean distance, physical distance, you could mean, what was the first? I just forgot it. You could mean that I won't speak with you. So because of that, Shmuel says, we don't really know what you meant. So mudrani mimcha really means nothing. Okay, we go back to the first explanation and say that mudrani mimcha by itself, we're just explaining it a lot better now. Mudrani mimcha really doesn't mean anything. Now, you have a bit of an issue because Shmuel goes against those braitot, but we're going to see soon that there's a machloket tanaim about yadayim she'en mochichot, and basically you could just say Shmuel doesn't hold by those braitot because those braitot hold by a different opinion. So now, the Gemara is going to actually question a little bit of this explanation of Shmuel. Turning now to Amud Bet, Lema kasav Shmuel yadayim she'en mochichot lo havin yadayim. So the Gemara immediately puts it into the terminology that I already did for you, which is, call it what it is. It's, right, call a spade. This is yadayim she'en mochichot. So wait a minute. You're saying that Shmuel thinks yadayim she'en mochichot are not yadayim? Now, this sounds very surprising to them. You'll see in a minute why it's surprising. Because there's a machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis hold the yadayim she'en mochichot count. Okay, they don't actually hold it in our case, in neder. They hold it in a different case. But generally we hold by the majority and not by a minority. But which the Gemara says, yeah, what's your problem with it? Yes. Shmuel mokim la'lamanitin Rabbi Yehuda da'amar yadayim she'en mochichot lo havin yadayim. Yes, in fact, it's not the biggest deal. It's true, normally we hold by the rabbis, but Shmuel has someone to rely on. Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yehuda. He holds by an individual, which is fine, that happens sometimes. He holds by an individual opinion, which we're going to see from gitin, from get, divorce law, that yadayim, if you have now, here it's not exactly a yad, it's just language that's unclear, ambiguous language, is not considered yadayim. Now we have to learn the sugya in gitin. It's not. As it says in the Mishnah in gitin, daf pehei, gufo shel get. This is what you're supposed to write in a get. Like the main important part of a get is that it have the words in it. Harei at muteret l'chol adam. Basically, you're permitted to anybody. Rabbi Yehuda omer. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says that's not clear enough. Okay, we'll talk about it in a minute. Why not? V'dein dehave l'chi minai sefer teruchin v'igeret shivukim. It has to say in the get, this document will be for you, okay, from me. Okay, we're gonna see that right now. We're gonna understand the sugya the way it's understood in gitin. At the end of today's daf, we're gonna understand a little bit differently the way our sugya seems to understand the machloka between them. But right now, we're gonna go by what it says in gitin there, which is the issue here is that it has to say, this will be for you from me, a sefer teruchin, a book of separation, v'igeret shivukim, and a letter that basically has you leave, okay, has us sever our relationship. And why is that? Because the Torah says you need a sefer kritut. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's not clear that it's the book, that it's what's written is separating you, if you just write, harei muteret l'chol adam, it could be that what did you do? You went to your wife and you said, I'm divorcing you, and you gave her a document that basically documented what you did. So it's writing down, yes, you're now permitted to everyone because I divorced you with words. Now you can't divorce with words. You have to divorce with a document. That's what the Torah says. You need to give her a sefer kritut. It's the book. It's the written word. It's not a book, but it's a piece of parchment that separates the two. So it has to say on that piece of paper, this is what's separating between us. Without that, Rabbi Yehuda says it's not so clear. The rabbis say, of course it's clear. Everybody knows it's the get that's separating. It's very, or really what they're saying is, it doesn't matter if it's not clear. It's a yad she'en mochiach is clear enough, basically. Okay? It's ambiguous, but it's not that ambiguous. You know, we're not really worried about ambiguous things because we basically understand what they mean. Just like mudrani mimcha. Maybe you mean I'm not going to talk to you, but probably you mean I don't want to eat from you or benefit from you. So that's the machloket here. And Shmuel is holding like Rabbi Yehuda. To which the Gemara asks, Amai dachik Shmuel lo k'mo lemanitin k'Rabbi Yehuda, lo k'mo k'Rabanan. Why would Shmuel, and this is what go back to what I said before, why would Shmuel, first of all, understand the Mishnah not in its simple reading? The simple reading was case 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all problematic, as opposed to saying 1 plus 4 would be problematic, or 2 plus 4 would be problematic, or 1 plus 5 would be problematic, right? It's definitely not the simple reading of the Mishnah. And number 2, he's going by a unique opinion, not by the majority. We always follow majority. Why wouldn't he hold like the rabbis? What pushed Shmuel to give some out there explanation, and why didn't he just say, so what, it's not the most clear language, it's still pretty clear what you mean. So Amar Rava matnitin kashite. It was the language of the Mishnah that bothered him. And again, not 100% clear whether you'll agree with this or not, but why did it have to say that I will eat from you, or that I will taste from you? The emphasis being on the word for you. It could have just simply said that I eat, that I taste. And because it added the word lecha, shma mina b'inyan Nedarim mochichot. Specifically added the word lecha, otherwise it wouldn't have been clear. Why wouldn't it have been clear? So, the Ran, again, there's different explanations for this. The Ran, if you look, it's about 6 lines from the bottom of the page in the Ran. He says in the middle of the Dibor Matchil Amar Rava Matnitin Kashite, he says the following: if you had just said Shani Ochal or Shani Toem, you might have read this in a bit of a different manner. You could say Hachi Kamar. This is what it said: Mudrani Mimcha, I will be avowed from you. That I will not speak with you. Here we go back to that. Maybe it just means I won't speak with you. What does that have to do with food then? If you say Shani Ochel, as what does that mean? In other words, the food is not about what I won't do. It's saying, if I eat today, then my vow will apply. And then, if I eat today, then I vow, meaning you're trying not to eat really. It has nothing to do with I won't eat your food. Okay? Only because it says Shani Ochel Lecha, it makes it clear I'm saying I won't eat your food. But if I just said Shani Ochel, maybe it means if I eat today, then I'll be avowed to you that I won't speak with you for 5 days, something like that. Okay, so maybe the word Shani Ochel could be interpreted differently. Therefore, comes Shmuel and says the reason it says Shani Ochel Lecha was because it was teaching you the language has to be very clear. If it could be possibly explained some other way, then it's not going to be valid, and that's why they specifically added the word Lecha. Again, that's the Ran's interpretation of why Lecha is so significant, but it's one way to go. So what have we done so far? I just want to quickly review again because the stuff is a little bit complicated, but if you keep reviewing, it makes it very clear, or at least much more clear. So again, let's just review from the beginning. We had Shmuel, who said the words, Bekulan ad shiomar shani ochel lecha shani toem lecha, which sounds like it's only going to be effective if you add mudrani mimcha plus shani ochel lecha. We have problems with that based on these bright totes. We explained it differently, that maybe shani ochel lecha shani toem lecha is only one-sided, but if you say mudrani by itself, right, as opposed to with Shani Ochel Lecha, if you say it by itself, both will be forbidden. We said that doesn't really work based on the Mishnah in Nedarim further on. Then we said, and plus, for the reason that we rejected the next one, which is also, it's, right, Mudrani, the language of Shmuel was that Mudrani should be more limiting and not more all-encompassing. Then we had Shani Ochel Lecha, Shani Toem Lecha. If you add those words, then you know it's only forbidden to eat. If it's Mudrani Mimcha, it's forbidden any kind of benefit. Again, we had the problem. It doesn't make any. Again, this is where we had the problem. It doesn't match the language of Shmuel, which seemed to be limiting it. Mudrani would be less than and not more than. And therefore, we came to the conclusion that we explained it the first way, but explained it better, which is, if you say Shani Ochel Lecha, Shani Toem Lecha, then it would be forbidden. Mudrani Hemach is an unclear language. It's a Yad She'eno Muchach. See, someone asked about Yadot and Yadayim. It's really one and the same. So it's called Yadayim She'ena Mochichot. And it's unclear language. It's unclear language. It's not effective. That is only one side of a two-way machloket between the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda that you see as appears in Get. Right now, we're assuming it's exactly the same thing by Get and by us. Okay, in a minute or two, we're going to actually raise some questions on it. But right now, we're assuming it's the same machloket, and then go back to our Braita, which raised a problem in case number 1 on Shmuel. Don't worry about that Braita. You could say that Braita is the rabbis that think Mudar ani Mimcha is effective, and Shmuel thinks it's not effective like Rabbi Yehuda because it's a Yad She'eno Muchach. Okay, that's what we've done so far. Now, the Gemara brings that not only is it the Shmuel said this, that Yad She'eino Muchach is not a Yad, or is not effective, also there's a Machloket Rav and Abaye on this exact topic. So, Shmuel, first generation Amoraim, Rav and Abaye, fourth generation, so a few generations later, we have a famous debate, Itmal, Yadayim She'ein Mochichot, specifically about this issue. Abaye Amar, Havyin Yadayim, Rav Amar Lo Havyin Yadayim. I want to just point out one specific thing, which is Shmuel, it's not clear that's what he said. The Gemara assumes that's what Shmuel said because they couldn't understand Shmuel in any other way. Here we have it explicitly stated that this is the debate between Rav and Abaye. So Abaye says Yadayim She'ein Mochichot are effective, seemingly holding like the rabbis, which we'll talk about that in a minute. And Rava says Lo Havyin Yadayim, they're not, seemingly holding like Shmuel and like Rabbi Yehuda. So Amar Rav is now going to explain why he holds this way. We're not going to have Abaye's explanation, only Rav. Rabbi Idi Esber Ali, he explained to me, Amar Kra, Nazir lahazir laHashem. We already darshan this pasuk, right? That this teaches you that Yadot Nazirut are like Nazirut, right? That if you take on Nazirut with a Yad, with a cut off language, it will be effective. Well, he says like this, since we learn Yadot Nazirut from Nazirut, Makish Yadot Nazirut Nazirut, we're going to assume the Yad of a Nazir is just like a regular Nazirut. What does that mean? Well, whatever criteria are true for a Nazir and taking upon yourself Nazirut in a normal manner are going to be true for a Yad. What does that mean? Ma Nazirut b'hafla'ah, af Yadot Nazirut b'hafla'ah. Nazirut has to be with an expression. Hafla'ah means an expression, but a clear expression. The famous example is, if we have a bet, and I say, if I'm right, then you'll be a Nazir. And if you're right, I'll be a Nazir. No one's a Nazir. Because that's not hafla'ah. It has to be an expression that's clear what I mean. And here, it wasn't clear that any of us were going to be a Nazir, right? It has to be, I'm taking it upon myself knowingly and in a very clear manner. So just like Nazirut is b'hafla, af Yadot Nazirut is b'hafla. And here, it's not clear. It's a Yad She'eino Muchach. And obviously Nazirut and Nedarim are all the same. So the Yad has to be a Yad that's clear. So that's why I said in the beginning of class, we're going to distinguish between a cut-off language where it's clear what you mean, and a cut-off language where it's not clear what you mean. Again, machloket about the cut-off language that's not clear. Some people say it is effective anyway. Some people say it's not. So now they're going to say, like we assume they're going to say, Lema b'plugta de Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan kamiflagei. Sounds like Rav and Abaye, each side on a different side of this Tanaitic debate. It's always nice when you can take Amoraim were disagreeing and say they're arguing about the same thing the Tanaim were disagreeing about. It's not. Gufo shel get harei muter l'chol adam. Rabbi Yehuda omer v'din dehav l'chiminaychu sefer taruchin v'get piturin v'igeret shivukin. If you notice, they add these words in this version. It also has the words v'get piturin. It all means the same thing, right? That this document is the document that's separating, as opposed to just saying simply, you're permitted in the document. Abaye damar Rabbanan, Rav damar Rabbi Yehuda. So it seems simple. Abaye, who says it's effective in unclear language, would say harei muter l'kol adam is sufficient. And Rava would say it's not, just like Rabbi Yehuda says it doesn't work. But here we're going to start distinguishing and saying, get is not the same as neder, and you might not be able to compare them in both directions. So Amar l'cha Abaye, Ana da Amrei afilu l'Rabbi Yehuda. Abaye says, you think I hold like the rabbis, that Yad She'eino Muchach is a Yad, and Get She'eino Muchach is a Get? No. I can explain myself. Now, by the way, this isn't Abaye speaking. Amar l'cha always means we're putting words in his mouth. We're going to say as if we're Abaye. Abaye could theoretically say that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, meaning that it doesn't break down in Abaye like the rabbis, Rava like Rabbi Yehuda. He could say, Afilu l'Rabbi Yehuda, Ad kan lo kam Rabbi Yehuda b'inyan yadayim mochichot el gabe get, debi'inan kritut beleka. Yet it says you need a sefer kritut. That means a book or a piece of parchment that separates. If you just write in it, harei muter l'kol adam, that doesn't separate between us. But, right, it's not clear that it's the get that's separating. Aval ba'alma mishamale. But in other cases, in a neder, who says that that's the case? It's not like there's a special way a neder has to be made. As long as it's pretty clear, and it's kind of clear what you mean, that might be effective for a neder. Get has its own criteria. Rava, now in Rava, we're going to all of a sudden understand things a little differently. We thought the big machloket, and in Gitin, that really is the main focus of the machloket, is about whether it has to be written that this get is affecting the get because it's, right, this get is affecting because of Sefer Kritut. Now we're going to actually see it a little bit from a different perspective. Rava Amar, Ana de Amre Afilu l'Rabbanan. Now Rava who says Yadayim She'ein Mochichot doesn't work here, could still explain by get that it's enough to say Harayat Mutar L'Chol Adam. Why? His issue is the wording. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Din dahavu lechi minai. He's focusing on these words. For you, from me. Harayat Mutar L'Chol Adam doesn't focus on the husband saying, I am, right? You'll now be permitted to everyone else because I am divorcing you, right? But if you say the words, Din dahavu lechi minai, this get will be from me to you, it's very clear I am divorcing you. So now comes Rava, very obviously, and he says the following. In Neder, you need to be very clear, because otherwise we don't know. Maybe you just mean, I don't want to speak with you, or I don't want to get close to you physically, right? Or whatever, right? I don't want to do business with you. And then we don't know what you mean. But in get, what else could you possibly mean? Okay, he says, they say you could say Harayat Mutar L'Chol Adam because what? No man can come along and divorce someone else. So if he doesn't need the words to you from me, it's obvious. It's from me to you. We were married. Who else am I divorcing? Aval ba'alma. But in a case where it's not clear really what you mean when you're taking a neder, mishama lehu. Right? Maybe rabbis would agree that you need to be more specific. So basically, what we've shown here, this isn't really, we don't know what Rav and Abai is saying. We don't know what Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan say. This is just suggesting possibilities in a typical Gemara manner, which is, we don't really know. Maybe these machlokot line up. Maybe get and Nedarim are different. Maybe the criteria needed for each one is different. So what we do know, as a fact, at least that the Gemara has established, we really don't know, because we don't know really what Shmuel meant, right? But what the Gemara concludes is that Shmuel holds that Yadayim she'em mochichot are not Yadayim. We thought that was in line with Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? It definitely is in line with Rava, who said the same thing as him, which is Yad she'en mochiach is a Yad, is not effective, sorry. That disagrees with Abai, who holds that the Yad she'en mochiach actually is effective. Whether or not it connects with the machloket by get is questionable. It's possible the criteria there are different, and therefore it's a different, that maybe whoever says here it is effective or isn't effective might not say the same thing by get. That's basically, so today what we did was we had 4 explanations, and it's 1 yesterday and 3 more today, of what Shmuel meant. The 4th one really went back to the first one and re-explained it in a way that was able to stand. All the other explanations got rejected. We connected it to this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, which in the end of the daf, it's not so clear whether they really connect or not. And that we got to through the Machloket Rav and Abaye and comparing that to there, and then saying maybe it's not really actually connected. That's it for today. A little bit of a confusing daf, but I hope that I was helpful in organizing it for you. Have a great day, everyone. Shabbat Tov. We'll meet up tomorrow.